Hello and welcome to Project Arnau. On today's video, we're gonna talk about should your villain have a significant backstory. Thanks to Nibit Manaf for this video idea. He actually gave me plenty of cool suggestions, which I will be using in no particular order, but over time. This time, I'm drawing an elephant, again in a manga style, or so I tried. If you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Follow me on my socials. I always love interacting with you all. Also, check out my book, The Project Are, a link down in the description. And for those of you who are interested in having a surprise adventure, I got you covered. Simply use code Miguel10 for a 10% discount on your next purchase. Link in the description, and remember to use code Miguel10 for a 10% discount. Alright, now, let's see. Should your villain have a significant backstory? At first glance, this seems like a yes or no kind of question, but let's remember that context matters. So for this video, I will point out situations where I believe the significant backstory is necessary for the villain and situations where it's not needed. But remember, these are not writing rules, and even if they were, exceptions are to be found. Please do share your thoughts in the comment section. Okay, so first, let's start with stories where you absolutely need to add the backstory for the villain, and that is when the villain is actually the protagonist. I know, I'm starting with arguably the most obvious case, but that's exactly the reason I had to include it. If your story is all about the villain or mostly about them, then it stands to reason to include a significant backstory. In fact, in most cases where the villain is the protagonist, the backstory is actually the story, if that makes sense. Now, the example that comes to mind is Maleficent from Disney. As far as live-action Disney retelling goes, Maleficent ain't that bad, but then again that's a pretty low bar. Anyway, the story takes the well-known tale of the Sleeping Beauty, but focuses mostly on the villain, aka Maleficent. We get to know her from her childhood, all the way up to where the original tale takes place, adding more layers to her personality and the reasons behind her actions. Now, while the movie is not particularly good, at least on my opinion, I choose it as an example because, in all honesty, I could not think of any other. But to be fair, the movie does give the villain a significant backstory as it was meant to do. Another case where significant backstory is needed is in the case of positive character arc, also known as the redemption arc, that is, when the baddies go good. A prime example of this is Gaara of the Desert from Naruto. We know that after his fight with Naruto, Gaara has a change of heart, but from a storytelling perspective, it only makes sense because we know Gaara's past. Here is a good time to acknowledge his backstory was meant for us to understand his motivations and actions, but in a way they were justified. Sure, we even get to feel bad for Gaara. I mean, his own father tried to get him killed. If you don't feel for him, you got problems, my friend. However, no reasonable person will think that Gaara was in the right, with all the indiscriminate killing. Now, once he becomes a good person, we can only understand his change because we know his backstory. Now, let's take a look at situations where the significant backstory is necessary for the villain. Before going into any specifics, I want to clarify that just because it's necessary, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't write it. The first one, I believe it doesn't need the backstory, is the negative character arc, also known as the corruption arc, which is the opposite of the previous one. This time, we have a good person gone bad, like an unrefrigerated yogurt. The example I use for this one is Zamasu from Dragon Ball Super. Through all the Goku Black arc, we never know anything about Zamasu's past. All we know is he was a Supreme Kai apprentice, whose extreme views on mortals led to his corruption. And as far as I can see, there was no need to add a backstory to make sense out of his motivations. Once again, not to justify them, simply to understand them. Anyway, we do know where Zamasu is coming from, even though we know virtually nothing about his past. That lack of information does not hinder on the story. Don't get me wrong, the Goku Black arc has problems, but that's not one of them. Another situation where it's not needed is when writing a short story. As the name suggests, this type of stories cannot be too long, so adding too much details, such as a villain backstory and a significant, let's not forget, could either take space for what might have more importance for the story, or it might end up being not such short story. Of course, if you really want to add the backstory for your villain on a short story, I'm sure you'll manage, but keep in mind that sacrifices might need to be done. This time, instead of a particular example, I'll give you a set, and that is the classic fairy tales. As 99% of them, the villain is only there as an obstacle to be overcome. So in most cases, giving them a significant backstory is a waste of time. Now, speaking of classic fairy tales, I have a playlist where I do deep analysis on them. At the moment, the list counts with 3 videos, but I'll definitely be adding more, as the classic fairy tales were the ones that first got me into storytelling. Sorry about the tangent, but please do check that out. I'll link it down below. So that's it for this video. Do you agree or disagree? Either way, let your thoughts be known in the comment section. I thank you for watching, hope you have enjoyed, and wish you all come back next week. Bye bye.